didn't see it out. I heard about it.
Well, this month was free.
Even if it's not true, it only matter in the intersection.
We are Greeks.
So Greek Orthodox mandatory qualifies to be the ruler over all creation under God. And in a sense, since we bear the divine image, the inside wiremission and the rest of creation.
No, I think right now it's sitting out.
God.
I like being outdoors.
I feel like the plans of like big ornamented stuff.
Yeah.
So then what about 50-year-old
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not.
I can run on the table.
Yeah, it's not great. I'm pretty good at operating. We typically leave.
I just licked my finger.
But I mean, I'd rather be outside. I just don't like it.
Really?
Why would that get your attention?
I didn't hear what you said.
He lives in
James on the target.
So you live in Roseland or something?
No, we have a Bible study with some old friends that we go to up there. And we had to go to Target because it was close.
What Bible study?
It's with some of our old friends from our old church. They're not.
But I teach at the Baptist school, Rosedale Baptist. So I'm in a lot of the circuits.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily because I'm.
Do you know Michael Thompson? No. Okay. Maybe Kayla Thompson? No. Okay. They must have been there. How long have you been here?
I've been in the area for like how.
Where was that?
Okay. Yeah. They talk like
What church are they associated with?
I'm pretty sure it's a Rosedale Baptist. Yeah, I don't know.
Grant Thompson. Okay, I did know. Grant Thompson was their pastor.
Do they have flags?
No, it's not. They're not the same. Yeah, it's Michael Thompson. He used to be a pastor.
Okay.
He used to go there when he was a kid, but then he passed there for a while. And he taught at Rosedale Baptist School. But he hasn't been there for a couple of years.
You can't grab and run.
Because I'm the only Orthodox that goes to a Baptist. They even asked if I was saved.
So it's so funny. I was just talking to we were just there last night. A slight falling out because
Y'all get sucked up in the
so they had asked like some question about Easter.
Yeah.
One of our friends with Bible study had asked because we're Catechesis, so we're researching. So they asked, you know, So I'm just giving them a base summary of scripture and of course some of the doctrine. They're very inclined to listen, and then we started getting real debating. And then this morning,
Son.
The thing's on.
Thank you. It's even streaming. No, but I would take some water. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes, you may.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what, Gideon? You guys don't have to ask if it's non-caffeinated tea. You don't have to ask. Herbal teas are fine. Huh? That's fine too. Isaiah, you don't have to ask if it's herbal or decaf. It's only if it's caffeinated to get that.
I swear, I tell my
Thank
kids
you.
to put their shoes and socks on before they come in.
Exactly. Oh, I know. And then they're going to get left there.
Yeah, and then they'll come out next time and say, go get your shoes and socks. I don't know where my shoes are.
Exactly. And then they go all over the place.
Under their bed that have their shoes
Yes.
in them. Precisely in their shoes.
So difficult.
You know, I asked myself that question. Like, we're not trying to put a guy on the moon here. No.
It's funny how it's like yeah.
Yes.
Good. Need to get some information from you. I'm writing down my All right, guys, we're gonna get started.
Yeah, we're not this way.
I work in DC every day. I don't see fascination. If I was to go down to DC, we might see the war memorial. Other than that,
Josh.
You're allowed to put your feet in the water.
yeah, I read a lot of war history when I have time. And I like warrior bios. Modern civilian warrior bios. And I was working in Delaware, stopped at a Lowe's, and I saw a guy, short, he looked like Al. Get out of there. Al, the old guy with the glasses.
Thank you.
There always have something in the evenings.
Your wife comes on Sunday?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, very good.
They've been coming for a while.
God. Taking it all in.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. All right, this time for real. We're going to get started. All right, thanks for coming out. Nice, I don't know, wet Wednesday evening. Coming in, hopefully you'll also take in something of the feast that is upon us, the entrance of the Theotokos. I think Naomi spoke about it. And when we commemorate when Mary was dedicated and entered the temple. All right, so we had a couple questions that I wanted to kind of start out with and maybe answer along the way, probably not answer. We're talking about the human person tonight. And, you know, a lot of the modern era, time, is a lot of our kind of societal shifts, changes, have to do with how we understand the human person, what a person is, how we relate to one another, You know, we have institutional changes to marriage. We have kind of transgender movement. You've got even just kind of modern individualism. So there's a lot of ways in which the understanding of what the human person is has really changed, and sometimes we're not even aware of it because it's just the air we breathe. So we're going to be talking about that today. We have one question about icons, and particularly though, you know, we're going to be talking also about not just human nature, but saints, which kind of represent for us, or can represent to us, sanctified human nature, the human nature that has been deified, that has been brought into, that is participating in the energies of the divine life. So, so kind of this question seems to be connected to saints as icons and saints. It was part of this question has a kind of a response to. Well, okay. First of all, if I have pictures of dead family members, is it okay to kiss or venerate them? Okay, right. So that's a great question. Like, what about like my mother? We go eat dinner in her dining room, and she's got this whole wall of all of these relatives going way back. And you know, what if you have a real connection with your grandmother and she has just died, and you kiss the picture of your grandmother? Is that okay? I guess I would just ask, well, what do you all think? Would you feel okay kissing a picture of your dead grandmother? Yes? Okay. Many people say yes. Maybe a few people didn't want to answer because they thought maybe no. Generally, I think, you know, I think if you ask that question to most people would say, yeah, probably so. You know, because there's an understanding that this is showing affection for your grandmother. She's not there to kiss anymore. She's not there to have a conversation with. And so when you kiss the picture of her, it's like you expressing the affection that's in your heart towards your grandmother, and it's an expression of your affection. So, and it is somehow directed towards your grandmother because there's her picture, right? It is not an act of worshiping her. It is not even an act. It's not even necessarily meant as an act of veneration. I think it's just meant as an act of affection, right? Now, when we kiss an icon, it is an act of affection, but it's also an act of veneration. There's more going on. We're recognizing it's not just affection, because sometimes it is actually affection, like your dead grandmother. Like some people have connections with saints, like you would have a connection with your dead grandmother. And so when they kiss those icons, they really are expressing kind of that deep affection. But it's not always the case. Sometimes it's just more like, instead of, it's some affection, but it's also veneration, honoring, recognizing the presence of that saint there in the icon. And so that's oftentimes what's happening when we venerate an icon. It's similar to kissing a picture, but it is more than that, because we're honoring these people. In this question, there was kind of a apprehension, a reticence about the processions that we have with icons, and I wanted to make sure I clarify this. A lot of our icons are like pictures of the upper half of a saint, like a bust of a saint almost. And there they are, like holding something, maybe blessing, holding things that are related to what they do. Maybe they wrote a book of the Bible, an evangelist holding a gospel book. Anyway, you see their face and their kind of upper portion. When we have a procession, the priest walks around. Essentially, then you look at it and you're like, is he like acting like that saint? Like, are we supposed to be seeing the saint when we see the guy, the priest, holding the picture, holding the icon, walking around? Like, that's really weird. You know, like, that's almost like feeding idols. Like, you know, it can't walk for itself, but we're going to pretend like this saint is walking around here. That's not, I just want to clarify, that's not what we're trying to do. I can see why it looks that way, because oftentimes it's the bust of the saint. But we also do the same thing with, like, the icon of the exaltation of the cross. We hold it the same way, make the procession the same way. It is kind of holding up the saint and kind of processing with the icon of the saint, but it is not us. It's not the priests kind of like putting on a saint costume, or the priest like making dude like I don't know, like I could see where you could maybe think that that's what we're trying to do. That is not what we're trying to do. Okay, we're not trying to like make the wood and paint alive in some ways. We actually would say it's not a puppet show. Thank you. Yes. So, but we would say that somehow the presence of the saint is there in the icon, but we don't need to like do anything to make that happen. Okay. So, that's one thing I want to make sure I clarify. But there's another question about before people are canonized as saints, they're just people, right? And I think that's another thing with Orthodoxy. You know, we talk about kind of glorifying a saint. We are not like making a saint, though. We are recognizing after the fact that this person kind of grew in illumination, grew in Christ-likeness, so over the course of their life, so that, you know, at a certain point in their life, that they were able to kind of transparently show forth the life of Christ in their life, that their life showed forth the life of Christ in a way in which kind of they were united with Christ more perfectly than most of us usually are. So we are saying that we're kind of saying after the fact, yeah, that's what happened. We don't call anybody a saint until after they've died, but so very often, you know, somebody dies and you know, like Papa Ephraim from the monastery in Arizona, like, you know, probably going to be canonized or glorified as a saint. Oh, there he is. So some people already make icons of him, right? So that's part of like how so there's a kind of a people who are already kind of understanding him to be a saint, people who are close to him. Then maybe there are some miracles that happen around his grave or in asking for his intercessions, like miracles happen. After enough things start to happen, it kind of percolates up, and a synod of bishops get together and say, I mean, in this case, I'm not sure if it would be the synod of bishops in Greece or if it would be around the Patriarch of Constantinople. But at any rate, usually in the kind of the location where you are, the synod of bishops would get together and say, this is a saint. So the Antiochian Archdiocese did this recently with Nicholas and Habib. It was a father and a son who died martyred. They were both priests. They both were martyred in completely separate incidents. And they were canonized. So they were, I'm going to say canonized, it's kind of more the Western term. Glorified would be the way that we typically talk about the process of recognizing the sanctity of a person. And so, but like I said, you recognize this kind of in the course of their life. Paisios, Elder Paisios, Saint Paisios. Like, it took a while for people to kind of, for us as a church to formally glorify him, but everybody knew. They came to him like, this is a saint, you know. So it's not like, it's also the case that we oftentimes don't glorify people who are saints. So we don't always recognize as an institution, as a church body, as the saints, and kind of call forth their names, even though these people were saints in their life. And that's why we have, you know, a feast like All Saints, where we recognize all the saints across all the ages that just kind of escaped our notice. Maybe they were so holy, you know, they died out in the wilderness or whatever, or they were so holy that they just died completely unnoticed and unremembered. And so, anyways, so they are saints too. It's just that we as a church didn't catch them. We didn't. But yeah. So we don't say somebody is a saint until after they've died, and the church has kind of formally done this. And actually, it was interesting with Olga, who was just glorified as a saint recently. The OCA told everybody to continue to say the Trisagion memorial prayers, Panahida, for her, until the date of her glorification. Even though they were like, we're going to glorify her, she's going to be a saint. But they told the people to still pray for her like she's just a departed faithful believer. until this point, and then after this point, we don't pray a Trisagion prayer. Like we don't pray for the repose of the soul of the handmaid of God, Olga, anymore. Now we ask for her intercessions. So, like whatever was kind of lacking in her union of Christ has kind of been completed, we would say, maybe by our prayers, and there wasn't much that was lacking, and so then she is now recognized by the church as a saint, and so we don't pray for the repose and the salvation of her soul. Instead, we ask her for intercessions. So that's kind of a little bit about the process of how it happens. I'm going to talk about saints again as we kind of progress, so if you have more questions, please feel free. Also, another question, when you die, what actually remains? We talk about saints with personality traits and compassion, but what actually persists after death? Is it safe to say that, to some degree, that's the essence of who we are, right? Now, I am going to talk a little bit about like this period after death, just for a regular person, in the last section of the life of the world to come, and kind of speculate on that. But I think the question is kind of getting at, maybe we could use saints as test cases. Like a saint is who has kind of like, we understand to be somehow in the counsel of God, kind of brought into the counsel of God, who are, they're surrounding the throne of God, sitting with him, in some cases enthroned, singing his praises. That these saints, who we kind of say are doing that even now, and when we have a liturgy, this is the cloud of witnesses that is surrounding us, that somehow maybe these saints can show us what it really is to be a person. I think sometimes what I've talked about is that I can't remember where I heard this, but I like the way that it is put, and it may not be a saint of the Eastern Church. I'm not sure. It might just be some theological writer. They've said, probably a British person, because it says, there are so many, sin is dull. There's basically just kind of like a few ways to live out your passions. We can kind of catalog them. And, you've got this, these passions of rage and, lust and greed and gluttony and, of course, vainglory and pride. And it's kind of like, we look at people like, oh, there it is, pride. There it is, lust. There it is, vainglory. And we kind of, as human beings, actually get trapped into these things, and really they are like a straitjacket. And you put a whole bunch of people in straitjackets, they basically all look the same. And they kind of all act the same, right? A little crazy. And whereas, if you have the freedom of the true life in Christ, to be who you are, that there actually is far more variety. There's far more kind of like there's shackles are off. You're not in a straitjacket or bound anymore. And so you don't all look the same. You act differently because your true nature is able to be expressed, and there's kind of this, there's maybe perhaps a kind of an infinite, or at least a number approaching infinity, number of ways of being, however many ways there are, however many Christians there are in the world, that's how many ways there are of being a Christian in some way. Of course, there's, I don't want to say like, anyway, somebody could probably misinterpret that, so don't misinterpret it. That it's your full flourishing of who you really are and are really meant to be, and who that is can be kind of just different in every single saint. Whereas basically the way you sin kind of like all looks the same. So what is that? What is that kind of core of us? I can't really tell you, because it's like John says in 1 John, when we see him, we shall be like him. We do not know yet who we are, but when we see him, we shall be like him. There is some mystery to who we are becoming And it kind of, we're living it out, but oftentimes we're the last ones to know who we really are. Everybody can see us being transformed, and thank God he kind of saves us from seeing ourselves transformed. So, who is the core of you really is kind of to be revealed in the last day. We often think like, oh, well, I'm really good at hacky sack, and that's who I am. That's like saying, who I am is an alcoholic. We're really kind of limiting ourselves, I think. And I understand actually why people say, my name is so on. I'm an alcoholic. There's something healing about kind of recognizing like this is something that I'm dealing with. But you also at the same time, when you get to heaven, we're not going to be doing that. Like, hi, my name is Joshua, and I'm an alcoholic. Like, that's going to be shed from us. But our true person, who we really are, is going to be revealed, right? So similarly with like things like playing hacky sack, or being like just really good with numbers, or like just having a knack for language, or just kind of like I can like drive any nail into any board with one blow with a hammer. Like, maybe that's you, Chad. Not quite.
No,
not there yet.
I just shoot them.
Oh, you shoot them. Okay.
I don't use a hammer anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Darn it. The modern world. So. We often think about this. Like, I'm a really talented musician. And the thing is, like, you probably are really talented. And maybe you're more talented than everything else. And sure thing, there's some kind of grace of God that can be expressed through this talent. And, but I think we're locking ourselves into something that's maybe more finite than really what God wants us to live into as who we truly are. That what I would say is, okay, so God has given you a great gift of musicianship. There's probably some way of playing music that brings you closer to God. And then that process of drawing into the life of God through the music, and also, of course, through prayer, through fasting, through acts of mercy. These are all ways in which we are being drawn into the life of God, and then it expresses itself kind of cyclically. It kind of fills our life, and then we kind of do more of certain things, and it kind of is this kind of renewing process. But and so your use of your music may actually lead you to express who you are more fully, but it's probably not in itself who you are. It's a little too kind of too much of a natural way of looking at who we are. There is a, and St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, he talks about a ensouled body, and he talks about an inspirited body. I'm really kind of using the Greek literally there, but basically what we receive from Adam is an ensouled body, and what we are receiving from God is an inspirited body, and so there's continuity, of course, in who we are as we're becoming the people that we're meant to be. But there's a real way in which the life of God is kind of, if it's being manifest, then we're growing into who we really are. Isaiah.
Like the saint who, when he was dying, he said to the angels, "Don't come yet, I'm still repenting." And all the people around him said, "He's glowing. He doesn't need to repent."
Exactly, abasisois, and so he couldn't see the transformation that was taking place in him. Thank God, right? Jared.
That said, we still kind of recognize differences in the saints when we ask for intercession and things of that sort. So there's something that remains, at least that we believe remains, that separates them perhaps from another saint in terms of that intercession. Is that right?
Yeah, when I'm saying that, like, you basically all look the same when you sin, and you all look different when you are kind of in Christ, is that I don't want to, that it's a complete opposite of saying, like, well, as we all, are drawn into Christ, we all basically look the same. No, it's the complete opposite of that. As we're drawn into Christ, like, his infinite life is manifest, and it's, of course, it's not manifest in each of us fully infinitely. It is manifest in all of us together as a body, but differently in different people. And so, yes, you have these different classes of saints. You have got you've got apostles who are sent out into the world to kind of preach the gospel, and that looks like one thing. It looks like St. Paul and St. Peter and St. Thomas, right? And you've got prophets, people who have been given the word of God to speak to people. Saint John the Baptist, Isaiah the prophet. Sometimes a prophet Jonah who, barely spoke the word of God to the people of Nineveh, but his life itself kind of manifested the word of God and revealed to us the mystery of the resurrection, of death and resurrection of Christ through kind of his life. So a prophet, showing forth the word of God. Or you have hierarchs who are hierarchs and ecumenical teachers, the teachers of the household of the church, right? And they teach. So they are given the grace of being able to explain things and teach about God. Say things that most of us would say, I'm not going to kind of say something definitively. These are the people who were saints during, or who were bishops during the councils, right? And said, no, Arius, you've gone too far. Hierarchs, ecumenical teachers. So we also have martyrs, people who die in ways that show that show us Christ, right? Stephen, the archdeacon, and the proto-martyr Stephen, the first martyr. Thecla, the first woman martyr, who traveled with Paul. Or all sorts of martyrs, even new martyrs like Elizabeth, the new martyr, who we have here and died during the Russian Revolution. We have ascetics. Okay, this is usually what we think of when we think of a saint. Like, oh, he is a saint. He drinks, water and eats bread. He has died to himself. He's, Paisios. You think of an ascetic, you think Paisios. You think Anthony the Great, Seraphim of Sarov. These are kind of this class of saints that are ascetics, and we usually think of as saints. But they've died to themselves. And then you have unmercenary healers who go and they don't ask for money, and they show forth kind of the healing of Christ. There's another class of saint, fool for Christ, Xenia of St. Petersburg, or Gabriel of Georgia, right, where they kind of like do these crazy things, and you think, man, I think it was Xenia who, when she saw a woman who was like high society come in all dapper, she was eating her soup, and she starts to smear the soup on her face and kind of like make fun of the woman by putting, they seem crazy, but it's not just kind of haphazard craziness. It's actually to reveal something to other people. Yes, Janelle.
There's only one Saint Thecla, because like we talked about Saint Thecla in catechumen lay class once. I think Saint Thecla the confessor, and you just said she traveled with Paul.
I don't know of another Thecla than Saint Thecla. She's on our wall here. There is an early text actually that I've just been reading because it has a lot to do with virginity, which I want to speak about here, but called "The Acts of Thecla and Paul," and it's understood to be kind of apocryphal, like there's things wrong with it that it hasn't been accepted as like a canonical text of the church or anything like that. But it does talk about Paul preaching in Iconium and her hearing kind of across the alley out her window him preaching and just being so enamored that she leaves her betrothed and follows him and preaches. And she is actually taken and for leaving her betrothed and set on fire, but God sends a storm and puts out the fire, and then she goes and travels with Paul. I think it's probably the same Thecla.
Yeah, sounds like it. So she only mentioned in the Acts of Paul, Thecla, not in the Bible.
She is not in the Bible.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe she was
No.
mentioned.
No, it is. That's why kind of people are like, I don't know about this kind of Acts of Thecla and Paul. Generally, it's fine. There doesn't seem to be anything that's like heretical about it. It's just, is this historical? That's the question that people ask. But she has been received into kind of our Synaxarion, our Lives of the Saints, and a lot of the life of Saint Thecla is taken from the Acts of Saint Thecla and Paul. But yes, Dylan.
The classifications or things that you're listing, are these things that are in some way formalized by the church, or are they sort of just more like trends?
I went through for you, except for Fools for Christ, I went through for you the list of classes of saints that every priest commemorates whenever there's a liturgy. So we have a service that we do, about half an hour before the liturgy, the proscomedia, where we prepare the lamb. And then after we prepare the lamb, we cut another little piece, a triangle for the Theotokos, and we lay that on the right side of Christ. And then we cut out 9 little triangles for the different ranks of saints. And so actually we start with the bodiless powers in the Antiochian and Greek tradition. The bodiless powers, so we cut out for them and say, and we say some kind of representative saints there, Gabriel and Michael, of course. And then we go on to the prophets. And so, yes, all of those ranks are those ranks. I was just listing the ranks. Yep. Yep. Yes.
This is a bit Lord of Spiritsy.
Okay, sure thing.
But are those 9 classifications and ranks?
Yeah.
Kind of representative, quote unquote, of the ranks of angels?
No, there's 9, but I think the last 2 are kind of like catch-alls. So the 8th one is the ancestors of God, Joachim and Anna, and then whatever saint we commemorate that day. So that's the 8th commemoration, and then the 9th commemoration is whatever liturgist, whichever liturgy you're serving. So most weeks it's John Chrysostom. Again, even though actually we commemorated him earlier, we do him again because of it's the liturgy that we're serving. So no, there's not really a. I mean, maybe the number 9 is there because of the nine ranks, and it's the sense of kind of completion and wholeness with the number 9. But there's not a parallel. Yes, Ashley.
So I'm not even sure how to phrase this question. But I've heard stuff or read stuff that, well, first of all, like the word martyrdom means witness, and there's a lot of passages in the Bible about like being a witness.
Absolutely.
But also like there's different classifications of martyrdom, like red, green, and like white and stuff. Like what is?
I don't know about the colors, but there are kind of different kinds of martyrdom. We sometimes talk about a confessor who maybe they suffer on behalf of the faith, like Maximus the Confessor, but they're not necessarily killed. Actually, Maximus the Confessor died from his wounds, from having his hand cut off and his tongue cut out, because they didn't like what he was teaching, even though his ideas were the main thing behind the main ideas behind the Sixth Ecumenical Council. So he was eventually vindicated, but at the time, so he's a confessor. And then you have martyrs. I know in the Russian church you also have these passion bearers, who are basically like political figures who died political deaths, and they're kind of I think what they say is these were people who, even though they were living in the political they were emperors or whatever, that they were living holy lives, and they died kind of because somebody else wanted the throne, but their sufferings were able to kind of participate in the sufferings of Christ. That they were, because of their sanctity of the person, their sufferings themselves were also, even though their death didn't witness to the name of Christ, they didn't die for the name of Christ. So there are kind of these like mini categories within there.
The color thing, it was like something in like the book Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives or something, and it was like red is like blood, or like, and then like I forget, one of them's aesthetics, and I don't know what the other one is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know what. That's I'm like I don't know how to phrase this question.
Yes. Okay. So there. What's the relationship between martyrs and ascetics? Because in some ways they're both dying to themselves, or they're dying. So in the ranks that I just gave you, kind of they're separated out. But I think maybe Thaddeus. What's his name? Elder Thaddeus. Was probably kind of like saying that there's different ways to witness. That's what martyrdom is. So, it could be through death. It could be through asceticism. Maybe there's another way. He's just using a little bit of a different categorization, but there's overlap. Yeah. Nat.
So Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel are angels and saints.
Yeah.
Are angels? I guess big question. Are angels people?
Yeah.
How can angels be saints?
Yeah, they are. Well, I think we would say that they have hypostases, that they have like personhood, or in some way. I think that's. I guess I'm not Lord of Spirits enough, and I haven't thought about it, but I don't see why you wouldn't say that. So we talk about them as bodiless powers, but there is something to them, like this is Gabriel. So there is kind of a personhood to them. Are they saints in the same way that we are saints? Not exactly. I think I said in a previous session, I'm not really kind of big into angelology, and I don't know a lot about this, but I mean, kind of the idea is that these are the servants of God, that they were created to serve God, and it's not the same order of creation and salvation as human beings. So Christ came and saves us in a certain way. I think they already are participating in the life of God from creation, and are not like saved by Christ like a human being is saved by Christ by his union with our nature, because they do have a different nature. So it's probably not very helpful to speak about angels as saints, but just in kind of the way we speak, we do say that. Yeah, Vasilios.
Okay. Would it be incorrect to say that like the words like sanctified, like saintness is we say like that, like a saint is a holy person, like the literal meaning of the word saint.
Yeah.
And so we are saying holy being, holy person, angel, Michael, not necessarily like repentant sinner Michael.
Yes. Okay. So that's good, because so in other languages, in Latin, sanctus, holy. In Greek, agia, holy, right? So we have that. Sometimes in English, we think sanctified, and we think about that as a process, right? And for human beings, it is a process, generally. But for the holy angels, it is appropriate to say, sanctus, or Aya, Michael or Gabriel, but there's not the same kind of process of sanctification that we have to go through. I think that's correct. Yes. Jaden. Good. Oh, yes, that's right. Blue, I'm sorry. You had your hand up.
Is there a historical reason why female saints are mostly martyrs?
Well, I mean, so number one, they are not typically, they're not in the hierarch class. They are not in the, because it's not allowed to be bishops. They're not in the apostle class, because we do actually have equal to the apostles who are women. So Nina, Enlightener of Georgia, Olga, I believe. There's a few others. So there are some in that class, right? But but by virtue of being a woman, and you're not going to be an apostle. However, we do have women in the ascetic class. So so women who went into the monastery and are recognized as saints. Martyrs would be the very big class, and that is definitely where you see the most, probably kind of like just if you were looking for an icon of a saint and you were looking for a woman, probably she's going to be a martyr, you know. That's true. But some of this is happenstance, not because we think that women can't be, you know, sanctified in other ways. Also, generally, people who did healing, you know, they typically were kind of also studying the healing arts. Back in the day, that would not have been a woman. Generally, now, as time progressed, of course, there were plenty of women. But for some reason, all of our unmercenary healer saints typically are from really a long time ago. Same with prophets. All right, Bronson.
So, what was the process look like when people were trying to figure out who's saints? Is it just like a bunch of priests getting together and debating over it, or?
No, and it's not priests either. So, like Vasileios had a picture, an icon of Elder Ephraim, who, you know, many people recognize his sanctity. So the people, the monks, I believe, the people surrounding that monastery in Arizona probably made that icon as a kind of a sign, a testimony to his sanctity. Not everybody has that icon, right? But you know, there's kind of a devotion to him there. And probably at his 17 other monasteries, 16 other monasteries as well. And then kind of this devotion either grows or it fizzles out. If it fizzles out, then the person is not kind of recognized as a saint by the church. If it grows, and in fact, like it expands so that, you know, there's people have a testimony of miracles when they ask for his intercessions, and things happen at his gravesite, kind of miraculously. Then the bishops of that region meet together, and they say, you know, we as a synod have looked at the things that have happened around Ephraim, and we recognize that indeed he is a saint. We have to kind of glorify him or recognize him as a church, as a saint. That's how it happens. You know. Chad.
This kind of follows Nat's question. Would it be safe to say that the difference between, say, Michael the Archangel and, say, St. Olga is because Michael was a created being from the beginning of time when God created the earth, and Olga was birthed from a woman on earth. And would that be... Is that what you were trying to get at, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, my question was, you know, why do we call both angels and people saints? What do they have in common?
Yeah, and that is
different classifications.
There are different classifications. I guess what for us as human beings to be a saint is to be conformed to Christ, to be to kind of live his life, and to have his life within us, and it manifests kind of more and more fully day by day. For an angel, in some ways, it's just faithfulness. It's like, well, I didn't fall with Satan, you know. I was created, you know, as a rational being, perfect, and this is where it gets complicated, kind of changeless in some ways. And I just live out that calling without falling. Now, because human beings change, now we fall, and as Vasileios said, we have to repent. It's not something the angels do. We have to repent, and in some ways, you know, our bodies facilitate our repentance. So, so we have to deal with the reality of the fall, whereas angels don't. It's kind of the difference. But but being a saint is living out your true nature that is connected to God. Jaden, you've had your hand up, and then Ashley.
Thank you. This is a common question that I get asked by a lot of my Protestant friends. How do saints hear when we ask saints for their intercessions, how do they hear us?
When we ask saints for intercessions, how do they hear us? Like, isn't just God, you know, omniscient, all-knowing, and all everything, all-powerful? How could they perhaps do things? Like, there are stories of saints doing things. Like, Isn't that just God? Like, what is this thing with the saints who are dead, hearing you, hearing your prayers, doing things somehow? How is it that they have like kind of almost material agency in the world? Yes, it is true that they do not like kind of in our time-bound way of thinking about things. They don't have bodies yet because the resurrection hasn't happened yet, and so we have their relics, right? And so we kind of have their bodies, and they if all the saints were kind of already resurrected in our mind, then we wouldn't have their relics. There's only one saint who that's the case with. Well, there's especially one saint who that's the case with, but so how is this? I guess I would say that their union with Christ. We're saying that these people were so united with Christ that they kind of were they have become what we all are meant to be. What we all are meant to be are kind of enter into the life of God. God is everywhere present and filleth all things. And so then, if they are in the life of God, somehow they can be present wherever God is present. I don't know exactly how all that works out, but it's not like they are an independent, like all-knowing, all-hearing, all omnipotent being independent of God. That would be a problem. That would be a heresy, that would be problematic. But for them to be in God and to receive His powers in many ways, because they are in Him, that's more what we teach. And so, even if your saint does something, it's as the angels might do something. It's kind of as somehow an emissary of God, somehow somehow in God. I don't know exactly how that works. And I guess what we would say is, I think the main difference, though, is that we do kind of talk about people who have died and are not really, it's pretty clear they weren't really united with Christ very well. They were on the road when they die, and they're kind of in a holding place where either the sun's rising or the sun's setting, right? And we're praying for them. And the saints have been brought up higher, I guess that's all I'd say. And having been brought up higher, they're able to kind of do and be present in ways that just dead people aren't able to be.
God could tell.
God could?
God could tell.
Well, exactly. It's only because of God. And the thing is, this says a lot about God, actually. It says that God delights in working through people. That He's not typically the God who just, Himself throws lightning down, or Himself, like, airdrops food in to people who need food. No, He delights in using people and using us, and then also using saints in heaven to do His work. This is how He's always been, and I guess so. It shouldn't be surprising if somehow He's using saints who've been brought into His presence more fully to do things as well as using us. Ashley.
So, as far as calling angels saints and then humans as well, so that chief sainthood. Well, isn't that part of the incarnation too? Oh, well, there's something. Well, let me get myself. They're doing the service of God that, to break evil or the spells of evil in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're saints because within the manifestations of the world, Archangel Michael and Gabriel bring about the breaking of evil, the Annunciation or the intercession. So Archangel Michael could stay, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also there's stuff where in the incarnation there's new creation and stuff, or the fire of love of the angels that He created burns brighter for God and stuff. So that could be part of it too. And then you have certain situations in Ephesus where St. John of Shanghai, it's thou didst show manifest through the angelic life, or the Mother of God being more honorable than all the angels and showing forth this kind of angelic life, and it's like maybe that's like breaking the demonic kind of strongholds and reading about holiness. Or like the servant of God, because you say handmaiden and like all this stuff. So that's how you're doing that.
There's a kind of a continuity between saints and angels is kind of partly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And well, it's also interesting in the book of Daniel. Of course, I think it's Archangel Michael. He comes and he visits with Daniel, and then he's like, "Okay, I gotta get going because we're fighting a battle over here, and I need to get back to the front lines." And what he's doing is fighting on behalf of kind of spiritual battles on behalf of the Israelite people who are in captivity. For their release. Basically, there's kind of like a war in heaven going on, even as there's like a kind of events on earth happening. So there's kind of this angelic, like mirror. I don't know. I don't want to like talk about Stranger Things or something, but there's like some kind of angelic kind of corollary to what's happening on earth as well. And it is to break strongholds. And it's interesting, you're right, that Gabriel comes and proclaims to Mary this word that she accepts, and in accepting, Christ is born. It's like these people, the angel and the person, Mary, are kind of involved in this act of course, the birth of God, but breaking the stronghold, the dominion of sin, death, and all the demonic powers. Sam.
So, I know that, or I believe I read that in the Western Church, the kind of cult of the angels grew up in the Middle Ages, which is where we get these like funny statues of like babies and stuff. And it seems like Paul talks about, kind of condemns the worship of angels. And the word that he uses is not latria. It's like got a much broader meaning. And then John in Revelations falls down before an angel and is rebuked for that.
Yeah.
And so, do you know what the history of this veneration of angels is in the Orthodox Church? And
no, I mean I think the so Dionysius, the Areopagite, who the text that we have is probably from the, I don't know, 5th century or so, 6th century, maybe even later. At any rate, 5th or 6th century. This is where the rank of the angels comes from, or one of the early texts in kind of the Christian world, where you have these 9 ranks of angels. So, I mean, it is an early thing to be thinking about angels. It is interesting that in the New Testament, after Christ's coming, the angels do not receive worship, whereas in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord or things like that, the people fall down before them. Gideon, Joshua, and they're not told not to do this. They're not told not to fall down before the angels. But after Christ comes, the angels do not receive worship. In the same, they're not conduits for the worship of God in the same way. So there's something interesting there, but I haven't really thought much further about it than that to notice it. Yeah, we've got Janelle and Jared, and then Emmanuel. Go ahead, Janelle.
Isn't the angel of the Lord Christophany?
Yeah, maybe so. It gets complicated if you're gonna just kind of blanketly say all the angels of the Lord in the Old Testament are Christophanies.
Well, explain why it was okay to worship.
It would.
It also explains why he claims he can do things that only God can do.
Yes. If you look at this story of Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah, the 3 angels come, and then there's only one angel of the Lord. It does seem like pretty clearly like this is somehow a manifestation or revelation of the triune God, right? And that the angel is some kind of angelic thing. I don't think it would be wrong to say that this is a Christomorphic vision. It's not always been how that's been interpreted. Somehow, some kind of revelation of divine, a theophany, right? Yes, absolutely. Whether it's always Christ, I guess that's the only thing I'm like, well, is this just the pre-incarnate Christ? Is it the whole Trinity, the Godhead coming and revealing himself? Could be. Yeah, so maybe these are not angels in the same way, and again, I wish you're all asking me all these angel questions. Like I've said a few times, I don't know angels. All right, Jared.
So I probably should talk about the human person a little bit.
Yep.
Maybe I can bridge it.
Okay.
When we talk about sanctification, we talk about saints, we think about monasteries and things like that, not the common individual. And so, I think of the single woman who's somehow providing meals or something like that for everyone in the parish, her whole life.
Yeah.
There's a point where I don't see a lot of glorification or whatever else of those individuals, and it seems to be very heavily pushing and almost saying like it's a more sanctified life to live in a monastery than it is to live an average life, actually being involved with people day to day.
I want to give you a recent counter message, St. Olga.
Yeah, but exactly, St. Olga and actually Nicholas and Habib, also not monastics, but these are kind of rare.
Yeah.
So you are putting your finger on something. It's interesting too because we have these stories of monastics who are maybe they have a lot of vainglory, and they are shown somebody who is just in the world. Like, oh, go to the cobbler, shop, and I'll show you a saint, and it's the cobbler. Or, there's these two women who are, in terrible marriages, and the husbands are just awful to them, and this monk is told to go, and he's praying and kind of receives a voice from God to go see these two women, and these are the most saintly people in the whole surrounding area. So there you do have those tropes as well when it comes to monastics. But then, just if you look at the number of saints that we have and what their life story is, you've got a lot of saints who married. We've got this whole book of married saints that David Ford put together, and it's like always so very disappointing because, well, if you're looking for just married saints, because it's basically like, oh yeah, they were married, they happened to be married, but then they realized, that they needed to live separately, and they ended their days, in different monasteries, and those are the married saints. So it's like, okay, that's kind of a misnomer, like married saints, because the idea is that they put away the lusts of the flesh and lived in a monastery. So, all right. Last time we talked about marriage. Marriage is honorable, then the marriage bed undefiled. But, St. Paul does say in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, it is better to marry than to burn. But in some ways, he's like, it's kind of a concession. And this whole marriage thing is like, because you can't keep it in your pants. Like, and so that's great that you guys get married and you can kind of have this way of salvation. It's this kind of secondary way of salvation. And, I think in the Christian tradition, both East and West, until Luther, generally that's kind of the mindset, I think. That, marriage is kind of like a second-class way of salvation. And, yeah, sure, people can get saved that way. But generally not. You're kind of concerned about the affairs of the world and not able to, sit in contemplation and be illumined in your nous because you have like diapers to change and like screaming kids and bills to pay. And so, there might be some way for you to like die to yourself in those things, and God kind of makes that for you. I think that's if you're sniffing out that kind of flavor, like a whiff of that in the air, like I just want to recognize, like you're not crazy. Now, is that are there problems with that? I think we need to say not everybody who lives in a monastery is a saint. Choosing some people who go choose the monastery probably would have been way better if someone would have married them. And so choosing monasticism is a kind of an exceptional way. Oh man, I guess I've said things. I've got a whole bunch of hands now. So choosing the way of the monastery is an exceptional thing. The norm is to get married, okay? And so to encourage people to go into the monastery, you kind of need like a real jolt, a real kind of like, hey, look at these people. Look at what you could become. Look at St. Paisios. This is something magnificent. Yeah, okay, like 99% of you guys are going to fail and like probably have been better off if you'd gotten married. But like, here's a path of salvation, and it can lead to greatness. And there is a way in which the whole of Christian culture can be enriched by this. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that's probably partly why we have such a kind of a skew in our hagiography, in our iconography, in our lists of saints towards monastics, because it is an exceptional way to choose, a way of life to choose. And I guess it's also the case that what a saint looks like in that instance, maybe I'm really going on a limb here. What a saint looks like in that instance is almost like so very apparent. Like, oh, that guy is glowing, or that guy clearly has this wisdom from God. Whereas to be a saint who is a mother, it's like hidden, and it's not as easy to apprehend and to say that was a saint. The people who she served was maybe a very small group of people, and they don't know how to do iconography, and they don't have access to the bishops, and they just have lived with this saintly woman, and she dies without a halo. Oh man. Okay, so I think I had said Ashley was next. I think after.
It was Emmanuel.
Oh, Emmanuel. Thank you. It was Emmanuel.
I wanted to respond to what Sam was talking about earlier regarding the bowing towards angels. I believe the term that he had in mind was proskynesis. And proskynesis is, as you mentioned, was a broader term, but in the first place, an aspect of proskynesis is this literal bowing towards the actual movement of the body to put one's body in a lower position, and then the person that's being genuflected towards. And so there's a broadness to it, but there's also a kind of context to it where you can render proskynesis to God, but you can also render proskynesis to even just regular people. And this is something that you see across cultures, where you bow towards people, or you even prostrate yourself towards people, and putting your body on the ground towards the person. And so, like when I the angel admonishing John in Revelation, I've always interpreted that as either a show of humility, or as John at that moment mistaking the angel as God himself, giving what the angel says afterwards, but also in contrast with the fact that proskynesis is something that's given to God as well as angels, without there being regular understanding, in all of those cases that something is wrong when that proskynesis is rendered to God.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we did talk a little bit about that in the icon section right at the beginning. It was at the beginning and probably lost, but thank you, Emmanuel. All right, Fritz. And then Gideon, and then we'll come over to this side of the room.
Well, I remember something said about whenever someone goes to, I think St. Catechesis says something like this, if someone goes to a monastery, they're either going to become a demon or an angel.
I bet he did say that, and it's probably very true. right? Because it's so very extreme. Like you're putting yourself in a very extreme environment, and you're either going to fail miserably or become a saint. Thank you. Sometimes, actually, I've had a guy around here got kicked out of a couple monasteries. Decided to make his own monastery. Gideon.
So, when you're baptized, you're given a name, generally a saint's name. So, does that mean you're supposed to reflect that saint's life?
Ah, interesting. I don't know about reflecting the saint's life. Maybe there are some ways in which, especially if you meditate on the life of the saint, there you might find some resonance there. But it especially is that this person is kind of like your heavenly sponsor. That they are kind of your protector, and almost kind of like like your guardian angel. Not your guardian angel, that's separate, but there kind of is this relationship that you have with this actual saint, and Gideon is your protector, since you bear his name. So it's one of protection. It may lead, you may have steps that go to you embodying him. Please don't go home and break any jars or light any torches, okay? All right, Blue.
Okay, so to kind of go back to what you were saying about the mom not being a saint, but like,
Oh no, but hear me out. She is a saint, just not recognized.
Right. So, but if the bishops are the ones recognizing her as a saint, and one of her kids just so happens to become an iconographer, who then is to say that she's not a saint if her children?
Well, okay, let's say her children do make an icon. Like, this woman was amazing.
Yeah.
And then other people who knew her say, yes, I'm glad you made that icon. Like, and they start telling stories. And then actually stories about her start to build and grow and grow. And then actually maybe, at her gravesite, like, I don't know, somebody went and prayed there and something miraculous happened. They were healed from some, cancer or something. Well, then if it builds up like that, the priests suddenly kind of hear about this, and then maybe the bishop, when he comes, he visits her grave. It certainly could happen that then she was recognized as a saint. But it would have to be the same process.
So is the difference between not being a saint and being a saint that you have an icon?
Oh, okay. I do want to just recognize, because we would recognize that there are many saints out there that the church has not recognized. And so to be recognized as a saint by the church, we really are only recognizing a handful of the saints that actually exist. Okay, but I guess oftentimes the church recognizes the saints and they become instructive for us. And so it's interesting to me that we are actually canonizing married saints now. Because maybe maybe we need that. Like maybe we need a class of saints who also can be kind of examples for married people. Perhaps. Jaden.
You had mentioned that you were going to touch on virginity.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that.
That's great.
Before we go.
Yeah, okay. I just feel like I'm wading into way out of my depth, but I'm going to try. It is interesting that in Christianity, as opposed to say Judaism, virginity is upheld as a standard. So in Judaism, it was being a mother and a patriarch, having a family and children and children's children. Abraham and Sarah, barren. And actually the barrenness is interesting. It's kind of a corollary for virginity. They were barren, and so it seemed like in their old age they were just not going to have any children. And then God miraculously gives them a child. And so it's clear that it's God's miraculous action in their life to give them Isaac, right? And so out of their barrenness comes life. But it's in a kind of a natural way. It's like, they're a married couple and they're, doing the things that can make babies, and God just miraculously let it work this time. And so, but in Christianity, with the Theotokos, the Virgin, ever Virgin Mary, and early Christian martyrs too, and actually Saint Thecla. That was a 1st or 2nd century text, the Acts of Saint Paul and Thecla. Virginity is upheld as this thing that is a good. Well, if you're a virgin, you're not going to have children. Like you're not living out kind of like the Judaic ideal. You're not doing kind of like the natural thing. So there is this kind of understanding, like God's supernatural power fills the virgin womb, the womb of the Theotokos. It's like it's like, first of all, consecrated, it is dedicated to him. And the miracle is so far beyond just the miracle of life in barrenness. It's like life in virginity. And so that becomes a picture for all of us that, your purity, your kind of virginal life is the place where God's life springs forth. It's like the empty tomb. And actually it was the new tomb. Jesus got placed in a new tomb, which is a corollary for the virgin womb. The new tomb and the virgin womb. Jesus is placed in the new tomb that no other body had been placed in, because usually you place bodies in the tomb, let them decompose, okay, then you place another body in there, decompose, and so on. Never that had happened. No death had ever entered this place. He goes in there dead, and his life is manifest in that new tomb. So virginity becomes a kind of a picture of life out of, not just out of death, not just out of barrenness, but life out of something that cannot give life of its own, but is, instead of like kind of trying to do all the things that you would do to naturally have a baby, instead goes the other direction and consecrates itself to God, dedicates itself, renounces everything in life. And so virginity becomes a picture of the way of the cross. I think it's pretty accurate. We'll go Ashley, then Vasilios, and then we'll probably have to finish.
Well, like, the thing is, David was dancing when they had the Ark of the Covenant. We could say that the first covenant was, their job was to get the Theotokos, and they're like, that's when they're having kids. And then when, like, Jesus come in, he's the new man, so then it's like, okay, this new man from what, and this new Eve, like this virginal representation. So I think that's where you get a whole lot of the monastic stuff. But you still have a lot of like married saints, or at least parent saints, because like Saint Basil, great hierarch, his mother's a saint. Like, that's the thing. Like, you can't have more monastic saints if you don't have them being born into the world. So it's like, yes, they probably are like, obviously a lot more than we have in history, because they're there like quietly being, kind of unseen or whatever.
Yes, that is. I'm glad you brought that up. There are actually many mother saints who are mothers of hierarchs, mothers of, mother of Saint Augustine, Monica, the mother of Saint Constantine, right? This is from the Vespers of Christmas. What shall we offer thee, O Christ, who for our sakes has appeared on earth as man? Every creature made by thee offers thee thanks. The angels offer thee a hymn, the heavens a star, the magi gifts, the shepherds their wonder, the earth its cave, the wilderness the manger. And we offer thee a virgin mother. O pre-eternal God, have mercy on us. So it's kind of like all of creation up until the point of the Theotokos was to make an offering to God. And here we have the Theotokos that we offer to God. And so even we're caught up in her offering of herself when she says yes. We can be caught up in that offering as well. All right, Vasilios.
I had an inkling of a thought that the reason why the church more so focuses on monastic saints is because that's almost exactly how Christ lived out his own life on earth. Mm-hmm. He didn't marry. Mm-hmm. He spent a great amount of that time fasting. Mm-hmm. He suffered. He did all these things, and he taught, he professed, he preached.
Yep.
And so, yes, Christ did all these, well, of course, he's God and man, but like the ascetics show us examples of how to not be of the world.
Yes.
And by imitating them, that helps us follow Christ and be like Christ. But in my own pride, I could say, not to contradict your example, but I could like say, I believe my own mother's a saint, and get into some delusion that I need to imitate her now. But she was doing something
very particular.
God had very particular that was none of my business. But I think is that.
So you're saying that there's kind of a universality to these kind of monastic saints. And that's interesting because they teach us how to be not of the world, and we are in the world. There's just nothing to be done about that. And so if we can get the spirit of not being of the world, then it can actually help us as we live in the world, to live faithfully in the world. Rather than trying to find some pattern for living in the world, you have a pattern for being not of the world, and you kind of struggle together. And that's actually one of the benefits of being in a parish, being in a men's group, a women's group. You're struggling together to say, okay, well, we have all of these examples of what it is to be not of the world. And these are people who weren't living in the world necessarily. And so how do we kind of live out that same life that they're showing for us, but now in the world? That's possibly what part of what's going on.
It was, to me, I think, like, the church is just trying to be extremely careful about who it endorses and says, here's a good example to follow this person. Do exactly as they do. Like, it probably also wouldn't be a great idea. Who's that saint that goes around throwing walnuts at people?
Well, exactly. He's one of those fools for Christ. Is it Simeon or? Yeah, exactly. You probably don't want to emulate that. Probably generally should not put soup on your face. And so that's a good point. All right. We need to wrap up. I want to say one last thing, because we do teach, as Orthodox, the ever virginity of Mary, something that John Calvin, Martin Luther, Zwingli even believed and taught. The ever virginity of Mary, that is, that she never had sex with Joseph. I'm not even going to say consummated the marriage. That didn't happen. That she stayed a virgin after the birth. That they didn't live as man and wife together. That is generally taught. It had been generally taught, across the world until well after the Reformation. It has to do with the consecration of her and the life of God being manifest in her, and it's not appropriate for the temple that has been consecrated to the Lord to have some other man enter. To be very blunt. All right. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will be dismissed. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around.
Thank you.